I'm Kenneth Kinney, and on behalf of Victory University, welcome to An Education That Works. Every week, Victory University will be presenting to you people in our community, the leaders who've earned a college degree and gone on to achieve phenomenal success in their careers. Every week, we'll be presenting to you different profiles, hoping that we all can learn a little bit from their secrets to success. Today, I get the chance to speak with Beverly Robertson, who, after earning a college degree, went on to an extremely successful career in the corporate world. After that, she moved into one of the most iconic places in the country as the president of the National Civil Rights Museum. We sit down with her to get a few of her secrets on having an education at work. All right, so we're here today with Beverly Robertson, who is the president of the National Civil Rights Museum. Thank you for allowing us to come in. You're also the chairman of the board for the Victory University here in Memphis.
Indeed.
And I'd like to first off welcome you to An Education That Works and ask you if you would tell us a little bit about your career and your educational background.
I'll be happy to, and thank you for inviting me, Kenneth, to come on board to talk about this. First of all, I am a native Memphian, grew up and was reared here in Memphis, Tennessee, went to high school here. I was in the public school system, went to Melrose High. Later went on to what was then Memphis State University, got an undergraduate degree in education, actually special education, taught within the school system for 3 years. Also worked at Holiday Inn Worldwide simultaneously to teaching. Wow. And while I was at Holiday Inn, I moved through the ranks pretty rapidly to a position, an executive level position. Went through an executive leadership program through the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business. So I had an opportunity to work with some of the best and brightest minds in the country at the time. Through that program, ultimately moved on from there to become an entrepreneur. My husband and I run our own marketing and PR firm in downtown Memphis, and then on to the National Civil Rights Museum. Had an opportunity to go through an executive leadership program in the museum field through the Getty Institute in Los Angeles. And so I have been privileged to be a lifelong learner, and I think that's the wonderful thing about trying to educate yourself. Sure. All of us should be lifelong students in a quest to really learn something different, to add to our portfolio of knowledge that all of us tend to have.
I think the most important thing that a student can get from a college course, particularly courses that aren't within their major, is the development of a universal skill set. A set of skills that's applicable to any career, to any workplace, to any profession. Skills like organization, skills like critical thinking, skills like writing, skills like communication. That they're skills that college level courses can both provide and also then improve upon and also polish. And these are skills that employers are looking for.
So how did education prepare you for the work you're in today, and how did it lead you through your career?
You know, it's really interesting. One of the things that I think education does, because I went to a very diverse college, I had an opportunity to interact with people who are very different from me. I went to high school here, and it was basically primarily African American, but when I went to college, I was in class with Asians, Caucasians, people of all ethnicities and religions. And so I got an opportunity to understand and become very sensitive to other cultures, other people, other ages, intergenerational. That was very helpful because that's the world in which we live today. The other thing that I think it did is it tested my discipline to study and to really focus on excellence. I've always been an overachiever in everything, and it allowed me to compete with the best and brightest who came to the school. So that meant that it challenged my ability to succeed in different kinds of environments. And it also made sure that I had opportunities to do things that I wouldn't have otherwise had an opportunity to do. I mean, there are just wonderful opportunities that come with going to college, to receiving a higher education, that you just don't get sitting at home watching TV.
Right.
And those things prepare you for future jobs and future opportunities. You know, I mean, it teaches you how to utilize technology more effectively in the everyday workaday world. It puts you in contact with potential CEOs of organizations that you may be able to tap and network with later. It introduces you to professors that come from places as far away as Asia and as near as, you know, Memphis, Tennessee. And so the cultural diversity, the knowledge, learning new things, dealing with new environments, and having to adapt and have the discipline to do your work even when you party a little bit too. So I think it teaches a lot of things that literally prepare you for life. And that's the most significant part of going to college.
I take classes online and on campus. It gives me an opportunity to see my friends and interact in person with people. And it also gives me an opportunity to do class when I can, when it's convenient for me, when it's flexible with my schedule.
So Beverly, what is the best advice that you can give to a student today, a student from Melrose that's going to college, or a student that's in college today? What's the best advice you can give them to help prepare them for the career that feel that they'll go into in the future?
You know, I think on the front end, before you get to college, in high school, you really have to identify the things that you do well and the things that you really are passionate about doing. I think it is a mistake to try to choose a career just because you make a lot of money. Because one will never be happy, because you'll be jumping from job to job to job looking for the money. But you will never be fulfilled. So I think you need to, in high school, really work hard at trying to determine where are your real strengths. What are you passionate about? What do you really care about? And what do you want to major in? And what do you want to ultimately do with your life? What's the outcome of education? What will the end result be? At the end of the day, what do you want to be when you grow up? And if you go into college with a focus, with a goal, with having decided that you want to pursue your passion, which hopefully is tied to your purpose as well, and you know what course of study you're going into, then that always helps, because then you are always focused on, this is what I want to do at the end of the day. This is what I want to be. Here are the courses I need to take. And even if you don't know exactly, if there are 2 or 3 things that you really like to do, and in your first 2 years, you really study those in those specific areas, I think ultimately that path will direct you to one, and you will end up making sure that you continue to focus on that one area. I think it's very difficult to focus on 3 or 4 things at the same time.
Sure.
I think people who are very successful tend to be singularly focused. And I think my advice would be, do your homework before you get to college. Know what your passion is and know where your strengths lie. And then when you get to college, focus on that. I mean, focus on it with the determination and diligence that says, I'm going to come out of here with a degree, and I know the path that I'm going to take.
I believe that education is the key to anything. So while I would be able to give back with nothing at all, I feel that a degree opens more doors and many more opportunities for me to help those that need help. I believe the hard part about getting a job would be competing with the others that are applying for the same position. They might be just as smart as I am, but there has to be something that sets me apart that will get me hired.
So, what do you think is the most important skill? I mean, your degree was in education, and now you're the president of the National Civil Rights Museum. There are some similarities, but most people would think education teacher. So you know, if looking back maybe at your own career or just somebody you know, what if a student came and asked you today, what's the most important skill, tool set they could develop while they're in college? What do you think that would be?
Confidence, tolerance, the ability not to limit yourself. You know, your degree shouldn't necessarily define, you know, who you are. You should utilize your degree to get where you'd like to go. And that may not necessarily mean the path that most people would take. You know, when I got an education degree, I taught school, but I also opened my mind to other opportunities that came my way. And I think too often young people don't have the confidence to say, I can do that. You know, I think that when you get a degree, what your degree does is open the door. But that means it opens the door to lots of opportunity. And so you shouldn't allow your degree to limit you. You should be flexible. You should be able to navigate lots of environments, because really the discipline that it took for you to get that degree is the same discipline that's required for you to be successful in business, in education, in medicine, in science, in psychology. It is that very discipline. And honestly, if you are the kind of person that becomes a lifelong learner, I think then you keep changing and modifying and growing and developing and building on those basic skills that you received when you were in college. And I really do think that one of the things that has really helped me is I rarely think there is anything out there that I can't do. Now, maybe I can't be a brain surgeon, but everything else is fair game for me.
Absolutely.
So I think it's the confidence, it's the security in knowing that you can do it. It's being able to utilize those skills in a number of different environments that may lead you different places that you never ever thought were ever open to you. And the other thing that I would advise young people who, or even people who are starting second and third careers, not just young people, but people who are going back to kind of reposition themselves, rebrand themselves. I think that I would say, as you think about the general operating environment in which you live, study the fields that are growing. Understand what the future looks like. What fields will be sustained long term? What fields are really shrinking in terms of job opportunities? And align your skill set with some of those fields that are growing and are destined to grow by leaps and bounds in the future. That's probably some of the best advice I gave my children when they started looking at what it is they wanted to do and how they could utilize their degree. So they never allowed their degree to limit themselves. I had a son who graduated with a music business master's and a music undergraduate degree. He started working at Sony BMG in New York City, and he was working in the copyright area. He now works for the Library of Congress in the copyright area. So he never saw his degree as a limitation.
Right. Absolutely.
He saw his degree as an opportunity.
Sure.
And so that's what I believe one would do, should do.
Living in and teaching in Memphis, Tennessee, I oftentimes take my students to the National Civil Rights Museum. I find that it's one of the greatest treasures that this city has to offer in terms of our history and also our culture. But I like taking students to the Civil Rights Museum because it gives students perspective. History is important like that. History You have to understand history to operate effectively in the world in which we live. You have to know why the world got this way in order to know how you might proceed in the future. And the Civil Rights Museum gives a student that. It gives them perspective, in particular on what's not always a comfortable issue to discuss, but the issue of race. And to understand the issue of race in this country, you have to understand its history, the decisions that have been made, the decisions that could have been made in order to build upon into the future and even to effectively function in this community.
As I said, when you walk through here, when you walk through the National Civil Rights Museum, it is a learning experience. When you're walking through a museum with beautiful pictures, you not only see beautiful pictures, but when you delve into the history behind it, it becomes more of an education. However, when you walk through the National Civil Rights Museum, you learn about the pain and struggles that come with race relations and how far we've come and how far we need to go. When you stand at the balcony where Dr. King did, you take in the historical significance, but it can really be a learning experience that will affect how you deal with people. So, based upon where we are, what can you tell a student, what kind of education they could get by the experience they gather at the National Civil Rights Museum?
Thank you, Kenneth. That really is a very important question. And there are several things that really come to my mind. First of all, you learn that one person can make a difference. No matter how poor you are, no matter how rich you are, no matter what your ethnicity or religion or race or creed is, that all of us have within us the potential to make a difference, because these were, over the course of time from 1619 up through the present day, people knew that they could make a difference. That's why there was always this hue and cry, we want to be free. You also learn that everyone should be able to find their voice right here at the National Civil Rights Museum, because the reality is that this story isn't just an African American story. It's an American story. It's the story of strife and struggle, victory and freedom, justice and social justice, economic equality. All of those issues affect every one of us, not just in America, but all over the world. You learn about respect, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, the respect that we ought to have for everybody, the sensitivity that we ought to have for anybody who is different. We also feel transformed by our visits to the National Civil Rights Museum, because you have to remember that half of the people in America today were born after 1970, have no knowledge of the seminal years of the struggle and the individuals that made it possible for us to enjoy the privileges that this Constitution allows us to enjoy. So the reality for me is there are many lessons that come. Respect, one person can make a difference. Your voice is right here at the National Civil Rights Museum. And what we teach here in terms of tolerance for all people is a value that all of us ought to hold dear, because it is that value and all of those values collectively that have come together, catalyzed to make America a great nation.
Is because if you just stop at a high school level, you really kind of cheapen the experience, because if you go off to college, it becomes more than just this kind of state organized thing of you have to learn this and this is general education, and you go into something that you really enjoy learning. So when you get a college degree, not only are you becoming more proficient in your field, but it just, it enhances your experience as a professor or, whatever you're doing, as well as your students, because you're not only just basically proficient out of high school, but you understand more than just the basic things. You understand the ins and outs of your chosen field in your career.
So, according to the national statistics, a lot of students today, a large percentage, don't finish their degree within a normally measured 5 to 6 year program. A lot of students either decide to go back to school to improve their careers, they've hit a plateau in their jobs, they want to learn something more. And those students are typically not 18 years old, they're older, and they've either had some life challenges that cause them to go back. What type of advice do you give that type of student, which is a growing number today that are being able to take advantage of educational opportunities? What advice do you give that type of student for a student who's going back to have an education that works?
I think I would say banish your fears. I worked at Holiday Inn for 19 years in corporate America, and I thought, this is it. It couldn't get any better than this. And then when Holiday Inn was sold to Bass PLC and they relocated the company to Atlanta, I was thinking, boy, Holiday Inn is what I've known. I graduated from college. I got that job. That was my first job. What am I going to do? But you know, I didn't ask that question very long because I realized that there is a blessing in being able to think beyond your first job and know that you've got marketable skills. The beauty of college is that you do have marketable skills that can apply not just to lodging and hospitality, but to marketing and PR, to the museum industry. And so if you think about what you have gained, you realize that, oh, so that was a good job, but I'm going to rebrand, and I'm not going to be fearful about it because the world is my oyster and I've got the opportunity. It's all about what I believe about me. You know, it's not about, you know, what that company did for me. What did I do for the company? You know, I mean, I made them great. You know, I contributed to their bottom line, and I can do that for somebody else. So I just need to figure out what it is I want to do and pursue that path, and don't be fearful. You know, so many times we think we can only do one thing, but you know, we have the power to do 10 things. Now, not all at the same time, but certainly 10, 15, 20 things that would allow us to make a very good living. So we can't be fearful about it. We've got to recognize there is life after corporate America. There is life after teaching. There is life after working in the medical profession. I can't tell you how many people I have talked to who went to school to get a law degree and decided after they practiced for a couple of years that wasn't what they wanted to do. So they went to medical school and got a medical degree. And now they're a doctor. But they were not fearful about it. Yes, they spent a lot of money, and yes, they invested a lot of time. But that wasn't what made them happy. So they decided to pursue something else. Didn't know anything about medicine, but decided that they had the ability to be able to be disciplined enough to study and achieve something that no one would have ever thought they could achieve. And that's the attitude that you as an individual have to have. You know, when my husband and I went into our own marketing PR firm, his mother and dad, his mother especially, had to go lie down on the couch. Oh, Lord, you're going to be living with me. Both of y'all in the same business. Oh, my God, what are you going to do? Are you going to be able to feed yourselves? But the reality was that we decided that we could be entrepreneurs and that we would be successful. And we had no fear about pitching business to corporate people and dealing with business clients out of town and out of state. And so for us, it was about stepping into the life that we wanted and believing that we could do it and making sure we anchor that in our faith. Because, you know, you just can't do this without having some confidence and some strength that comes not just from you, but comes from other sources, comes from another source. So we were able to become entrepreneurs. We were able to be in corporate America. Now I'm in the nonprofit arena. And so I would just say banish the fear. Understand that you have the power in you to do some things, some extraordinary things. You may view yourself as an ordinary person, but isn't that what Dr. King really was? Isn't that what the SCLC leadership was? Isn't that what the little girl in Afghanistan was when she stood up? So we got to remember, ordinary people can do extraordinary things. So walk within that. Walk within your destiny, and you will always be successful.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
When I was a high school senior, our English Lit professor was also our college preparatory instructor. Mrs. Culp told us that a undergraduate degree would not secure you a job. Only you could secure employment. She said, however, a well-rounded college education would help you get that job. She stressed that we had to take courses in public speaking, take courses in debate. If you're going to be a salesperson, you're going to have to negotiate every day. And to take courses in history, not only world history, but also U.S. history, current history, and to take courses in English, take courses in literature, even religion, art, and music. If you wanted to have a well-rounded education, the important thing was at that interview was that only 20% of the questions are going to be skill assessment. The other 80% of the time, that employer is going to try to decide if you're going to be a good fit for that company. And that's why a well-rounded college education is so important. Now, if you're going to get a professional degree, like in law, medicine, or even ministry, then you'll want to get accepted into a good school that has a master's or doctorate program. And once again, that well-rounded undergraduate education will help you get through the interview process and help you get selected. They only accept so many. In counseling with parishioners who are searching for a job, the number one thing I have to remind them is that this is not their fault. You know, my job is to always remind them of who they are over and above this situation, and to let them know that they're not alone. There are resources to help them through this process, to help them find jobs, to help them increase their job skills, so they're not alone.
If you or anyone else you know is looking to earn a college degree to help them move towards that next job or help them advance in their career, then I urge you today to go to aneducationthatworks.com. On behalf of Victory University, thank you for your time. And this has been An Education That Works.